Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to a new episode of Social Confoes. I'm your host Diego, together with my co-host Shanluk. Shanluk, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. I'm doing quite well. It's been a busy day, a busy week so far, but that means it's going well. So, how about yourself?
I'm doing all right. Busy. We had some fun this weekend. I'd say I had a rally as
Yeah.
well. So I'm gonna talk about a bit about that. But before we dive too deep into it, quick announcements. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/confoes. We're also on Instagram at confoes. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to our Substack newsletter at confoes.substack.com. That's confoes.substack.com. For the people who are already subscribed, you should have gotten something in your inbox. Hope that content is exciting for you. With that being said, Jean-Luc, what are we doing today?
So,
Flipping a coin?
no, not really flipping a coin. It's a topic that we kind of never discuss because it's a little bit of a it's a difficult topic. So, one of the things that a lot of developing countries struggle with, but it's not just developing countries. A lot of countries in general struggle with is gambling. And gambling has gotten to a state that it's no longer just for a select few, it's basically for everyone. So I don't know how broad I want to do the intro, but basically, almost everybody in the world is gambling at this point, whether it's specifically in a casino or specifically with lottery tickets or just taking gambles in life. Basically, everybody in life is gambling in certain sense. And some people take a less, uh, some people gamble more than others. Let's just put it in such a way. So let's, for instance, take a situation where you have the opportunity between getting 50 US dollars or an 80% chance for 100 US dollars. Which one would you take?
So a guaranteed 50%,
A
like
guaranteed 50
immediately.
US dollars or 80% chance of winning 100 US dollars and 20% chance of getting zero? What do you do?
In this case, based on my risk appetite and based on the value of the 50 and the 100,
Yeah.
I would take the 80%.
Okay. Okay.
But that's
Let's.
personally. And
Okay.
we can break that mindset down as we
Yeah.
go in the
Yeah.
further in the episode.
So
If the stakes
if
are
you're
a bit
watching,
different,
yeah, if you're watching
then
on
I might have,
Twitter or
yeah.
on if you're watching on Twitter or on Facebook or LinkedIn, and you want to give your answer, feel free to. So either would you go for 100% chance of getting 50 US dollars or 80% chance of getting 80% chance of getting $100, 20% chance you get nothing. You would take the 50 US dollars, or would you take the 80% chance for 100?
I would do the 80% chance in this specific
In
case.
this specific scenario. Okay,
Yeah.
let's continue this scenario a little bit further. Now, you can get 50 US dollars, 100% chance. So you can, if you say yes, you just get it, or you get 70% chance for $100. Which one do you take?
I would go in this specific case until 60%.
You would go until 60%. So
Yes.
if you would get a 50% chance of 100 US dollars to a $50, 100% guaranteed, you would take the $50, 100% guaranteed.
If it's less than 60%, yes.
Okay. So I try this exercise and I'll look at purely from a mathematical perspective.
Mhm.
So I probably am the biggest gambler in that regard because anytime it's above 50%, I would most likely say, hey, well, let's take the gamble. But that's in a case or a scenario where really you feel that the money is not yours to begin with, so everything that you get is an added advantage. And of course, that's with a smaller amount of money. Because if I
Exactly.
were
And
to
that's an
say,
important part, like a smaller
yes,
amount of money. If you
so
had set this 50, let's say
I'll
500,
give you, another one.
yeah,
1,000 US dollars guaranteed. Yes, a
yeah,
thousand US dollars guaranteed, or 50% to chance to win $20,000. Which one would you take?
a 50% chance to
Chance
do
to get
20. Is
twenty
that
thousand
the
dollars.
the
Yeah,
risk reward
yeah.
ratio?
But if you, it's 50% chance you get a $20,000, but it's also a chance that you get zero SIP. 50%.
50% in this case for this ratio, the
Yeah.
1000 isn't life changing enough. So I would go for the 20,000 50% chance. So you specific I want to emphasize on specific amounts that you mentioned, because you mentioned certain amounts of values require different types of risks. If it's an amount that's more life changing, based on your daily routine where you live, then if it was 5,000 or 10,000 guaranteed versus 100,000 50%, I might have gone for the 5,000 or 10,000 guaranteed, because
Okay.
that's more impactful in the immediate sense.
Okay. But you're now talking about the decision. I also
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit afterwards. Say you go for the 50% for $20,000 and you don't get it. You don't get anything. What's your mindset after that happens?
Believe me, I've been in this position
No,
quite a
that's
few
why I'm
times.
asking.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking. Yeah.
Like channeling myself the first time it happened, it is a certain dread that you feel like, oh, I should have taken the guaranteed. But if you preamble yourself with the mindset of, right, it doesn't matter what the outcome is, it will still sting. Believe me, we're all human. And when it comes to reward and missing out on something, you will feel a tingle, how light it ever may be. You will feel something. But that lasts for me, it blows over within, depending on the situation, a few minutes or max a day, it blows away.
So it's a really interesting thing because we look at it from a 50% perspective, being like the situation. And where does the 50-50 line come from? It's the casinos. There is basically no casino game where you have better odds than 50%, right? So
Hmm.
there's one scenario where there is, which is, I think, I wouldn't say officially illegal, but if you get caught, you will be banned from a casino, and that's card counting. That's basically the only way you can get a competitive edge at a casino, is if you come onto the table hot at blackjack, somebody gives you the exact count of how many face cards you're up or down, and that allows you to bet big and win with a higher chance of winning compared to the dealer. And that's only one casino game in one specific scenario where you have to be really good at math, and also you have to have somebody collaborating with
Yeah.
you, which again is not officially
That's a
allowed in casinos.
statistics game,
Yeah,
pure
so that's a
statistic game.
statistic game. For any other scenario, even roulette is never truly 50-50, because if you bet on red or black or red, there's still the zero, and in some cases a double zero, which lowers it slightly
Yeah, it's like
below.
48, 49%.
Yes. And then if you go to the boxes, if you bet like on six, or if you bet on neighbors, or you bet a line of three, or a line of on of what's it? Six, no, 18. It doesn't really matter what kind of, or 12. It doesn't really matter what you do, but basically you can never come up above 50%. And we just discussed the quote from Ocean's 11, like before we started the show, where uh,
Clooney.
Clooney basically says like, because the house always wins. If you
Yeah.
play long enough, they always win, unless that perfect hand comes along and you bet big and you take the house.
And to
And
get that perfect hand, as you mentioned, you
yeah,
need that
it's you
collaboration.
need that.
Ocean's 11 is an amazing movie. Like, I can't
It's
believe
amazing
it's from
movie.
2001. I want to
Yeah,
rewatch it
it's
now, but
20, it's 23 years old. But basically the whole concept behind the casino is that you can't actually win. There are a couple of scenarios which are, again, not fully legal, where you can when you can take the house. And another way you can take the house if you grind. And I think Rounders is a great movie for that as well. But there
can you explain writing?
you play against other players. So there are general rules for Texas Hold'em poker, for instance. And those rules are really crafty. So if you're like a real grinder, you'll be able to play Texas Hold'em, and if you play long enough, you will always win against other players. And the rule is basically you only play jacks or better. So if you have pocket jacks or better, that's the only hand you play, and you also have to play it in a certain way, be able to win, right? So and you have what's called loose players. Those are players that they don't always play with something, so they sometimes bluff and they play a little bit more loosely. And you have tight players. So the tight players only play when they have really good hands. And through that situation, playing against tourists, people that don't play very well, people with a lot of money that just want to spend and are not aware, and you work together and you don't play against each other, of course, there's always a way to win as well. But these are like real exceptions. These are like things that you could consider the people that do that, they're professionals because they've taken their time to study their craft and they know what they're
And
doing.
in that sense, where when you do Texas Hold'em, do you play against the house?
No, you don't play against the house.
Exactly. So the
No.
house is removed from the equation.
Yeah. But that's what I said. So the house, you basically can't win the house unless you're able to count cards, which again, not fully legal. And then you can play against others, and there you can stack your odds based on the quality of the competition you're playing against.
Yeah,
And
because then it's
basically,
not a pure statistics games. It's also a psychological game that comes into it.
okay, but this is what happens in life. And why do we bring this up for a discussion for today? Is there's inflation everywhere. Like we personally in our country have inflation, but we have so many countries in the world that are going through inflation, and so many governments in the world trying to find ways to solve the issue without really attending the issue. And that's a thing that will continue and has continued for decades, so it won't stop. But I think for the first time, there's a generation that feels like, hey, we're no longer going to listen to the people that make the rules, create the laws, create the structure, because they're just fooling us. And if you're well enough and if you're well educated enough, you can actually beat the system. And well, governments aren't a casino. So if you're able to beat the system, you can get rich. And there's the problem
I
with
want to
this.
draw
Yeah,
a comparison in
go
that
ahead.
sense. If we talked about casinos, we talk about the house and the players, and hopefully you'll follow me. There's a lot of lottery games, a lot of you know
Oh,
uh
the biggest
tickets.
sponsors to sports teams in the UK at the moment, like all these Unibet and all these
Yeah,
sports
there's
betting sites are taking over all the commercial opportunities because there's a lot of oh, I've contemplated this. I for my sports podcast, I've contemplated whether or not the local betting shops I should allow them to advertise on my podcast because I feel there's definitely interest from my target audience to for them to be a sponsor. The other thing is it ethical for me, for somebody who a lot of people look up to when it comes to sponsorships, to kind of reap the benefits from it? Even though I gamble myself, I have very strong limits. We'll talk about probably in this episode, but I have very strong limits for myself, and I don't want to be held accountable for somebody losing something of real value for them because they
Mm.
gamble because of something that I promoted. So that's the thin line. But go ahead.
Yeah, but coming back to that comparison, I want
Yeah.
to make the comparison as the government being the house.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of these betting
Ooh.
things, tickets,
Ooh.
and when
Okay,
there's a
maybe the
payout,
banks. Yeah.
the- when there's a payout, I'm not sure what the exact statistics is. Of course, it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. A large part, I think at least 40%, is taxable. So when there's a payout on betting, it's not just the person winning, they only get a fraction of that. It's also the government winning in tax.
Oh yeah, the biggest lotteries are if you're like if it's a wealthy country, the lottery is maybe even state owned, like the Dutch, for
Yeah,
instance. The Dutch National
it's a
Lottery is
way
state
to get
owned. Yeah,
taxes
yeah.
in
But
in an easy way.
yeah, so that in Suriname, for instance, our betting money for the lottery goes to Canada. Like we don't talk about that, but actually Canada is the biggest beneficiary from our gambling addictions. So that's something interesting as well. Um, but I thought you were gonna make another comparison, being that if all of a sudden everybody would withdraw, there would have to be enough as well. And that's a tricky or if somebody would win gigantically, would you we be able to pay them off? But that's I think that's a conversation for another
Yeah,
time.
well,
Yeah.
let's hold that on that line. But it's not only, before we dive into the mindset a bit deeper, raffles, lotteries, the you get SMSs,
Yeah.
messages from telecom companies. It doesn't matter. Here,
Yeah.
I've been abroad to Brazil. You get these random messages promoting
Yeah.
buy or SMS this 10 cents. That also is a form of lottery.
Oh yes.
And people, I think, disassociate that with casinos. Hence, it is not gambling.
Oh no,
But
it's every no, it's
yeah,
gambling.
but the
Yeah.
moment you take a chance, you
Mm.
pay, you I won't say invest, but you withdraw some of your own personal money and pay it out for a ticket or something for a fraction of a chance to get a higher payout. It's gambling.
Yeah. So it's funny because we started off with 50% for $100 and 100% getting $50. In this case, it's it basically it's like a
Zero point
fractional
zero
of zero
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 percent
point one.
chance to get $1 million, and basically 99.99999% chance that you're actually not getting anything. But we take that risk because it's like,
Yeah,
what
it's
do I have to
very
lose?
minuscule, and
Okay,
the amount you put in, it's kind of
okay,
negligible.
and this is why gambling is close to scamming, and I do want to make a distinction between scamming and gambling, right? Because like for instance the blessing loom thing, I don't even know if you remember, but it was this game called blessing loom, and there have been so many different versions of it. But basically that's kind of like these fake referral systems, which are basically pyramid schemes. They kind of give you a similar incentive towards gambling. It's saying like, hey, you're gonna get guaranteed your money back. And it's the same, I wouldn't say it's the same cognitive reaction that people have to it, but there's a lot of similarities between the pyramid scheme structure and a gambling structure. Because in an essence, people feel like they're gambling but they can't lose. And that's where you basically have to recognize a scam, right? That's one of the reasons. And I wouldn't say necessarily all scams, but definitely pyramid schemes. You should be able to recognize a pyramid scheme when the odds don't add up. So when the odds go above 50%, or somebody tries to present you a situation where the odds are more than 50%, all
Or
bells
the
should go
payouts
up.
are 200%.
Yeah,
There
all bells
have
should
been
go up.
ridiculous amounts.
Yeah. So as soon as if you like gambling and you like safe gambling, as in you want better odds, as soon as the odds go above 50%, you should be aware that something's not right. Because nobody in their right mind is gonna give you money for free for a long period of time unless there's a catch. So these are kind of things that we go through every day through society. And why we are attracted to it so much is everybody wants a ticket out. And I would always think that this is more in developing countries than it is in less in developing countries than it is. Yeah, it's more in developing countries than it is in the Western countries. That Western countries don't struggle with this as much. But I feel like
It's a universal, like, human nature thing. The moment there's a chance at something better, people will take it. The psychological effect to do it more immediate, I think it's more prevalent in developing countries because there is more pressure to survive. So they look for a way out. But I'd say across the board. And it's kind of with the media, with telcos, with governments, these things are stimulated. You see them every day. There's a lot of advertisement. So from the time you're a small kid, you grow into it. I had this when I was small. You had these raffle tickets that you scratch for numbers. That already is priming people for that chance out to a reward.
but even with collectibles, the way that collectibles are being promoted now, like I remember, and maybe I was wrong for it, but that's how the mindset changed. I remember having like tons. I have hundreds of NBA cards, like from the 90s, which I bought just because I love the game. I never any of them. To make it worse, the ones that are probably worth $50 to $100 now, I glued those cards, like my best cards, like the best Michael Jordan, the best Shaquille O'Neal, the best all the good quality Hall of Fame players, Charles Barkley, all their cards that I had, I glued them to my to my wall in my room because I saw it as like, hey, cool,
Yeah,
I own this. I
it's
never
something
thought,
that's personal to
yeah,
you. But
yeah, I never thought that 30 years later these things would be selling for 100 times the face value of what they were then. I never thought of it that way. I never
but
envisioned. But
that's not the
now,
point, right? But that's not the
no,
point.
no, no, but now it is. Now people are buying these things with the
I
intent, and maybe not all of them, but many like
I think it
considerably
has
more people.
become I think it has become more common. I think it was there already, but it wasn't as well known. There wasn't so much light
I
on
only
it.
know it with stamps, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's same thing, different medium,
Yeah.
different thing that people collect. So that mechanism was there through history, but with social
But it
media
was more
as
considered collecting than gambling. Like it
yeah,
wasn't like it was more like, hey, I really want this, so I'm gonna search and I'm gonna try to find and be a collector. Than it is like I'm purposely buying this pack of playing
in
cards
the hope. Yeah.
in the hope of winning the holy grail, the golden ticket. That's the major change, and that change is a generational change where all of a sudden people are more focused on the money than anything else. And this goes through gambling with your own career. So there are actually people that are now gambling for their career. They're trying, and that's something that's not new either because Hollywood was always there. It was always the gamble. I'm gonna go to Hollywood
Oh yeah.
because I have
Like
like a high
that type of
percentage
career was
chance.
the big one of the big gambles. The
That was
people
one
you
of the
see
big
on the red
gambles.
carpet is like the cream of the crop, or they're like really lucky, like 0.1%. But I wanna go back to the gambler's mindset. You said you are one of the gamblers I know, and you have a
Mm.
pretty high tolerance. You know what you're getting yourself into.
So
So you brought me to the casino last weekend.
yeah, yeah. So I think the
Can
most
you,
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, can you break down like how you kind of got into it and how your mindset kind of got shaped into the way it is now regarding
So I have
gambling?
to be careful what I say because the early moments of my experiences where I was underage, and um, I don't feel, how would I say, um, nothing went wrong necessarily, but it was worrisome, and the reason why it still is worrisome is because, of course, regulations have gotten a lot better. Of course, everything is more structured the way it is, but we had a situation in high school where there was actually active gambling at the high school and it had to be stopped. And there was basically an underground casino at the high school that was being ran. And I don't want to get into it too much because I don't want to get into trouble about talking about this. And it wasn't like it was a legit business or something, but let's put in the quotation marks. It was an underground casino going on, and there were people from different age groups, but a lot of them were underage. So I got into gambling like at a really early age, like really, and this was all pre. I mean, back when rounders came up and poker, a World Series of Poker really became popular. I was already studying in the Netherlands, so that was years later. This was when Caribbean stud poker was still like considered one of the main ones, and of course, like teenagers nowadays, they bet as well. Like, don't be fooled. Like, hey, we have a discussion. I think that person is going to win. You think that person is going to win.
Yeah,
Okay, bet.
sports
Look
betting
what
is
sports betting
huge.
has been always there, and it's just more being more facilitated, more and more facilitated now. So and that's also, and the reason why I'm careful talking about it, because it's very risky for people that are underage to gamble. Like, they're not aware of what they're gambling away. The first time I became aware of the dangers of gambling was when I lost a month worth of salary. So, a month's worth of salary, the first time, and it's actually the only time I ever have. And I think I was maybe 24, 25 when it happened. The first, or maybe, yeah, probably 25. The first time I lost a month's worth of salary, and it was my own salary,
Mm,
that was the first time that I was like, wait, hold on. And it actually, I think it took a couple of months to kind of re-envision how that happened, like how I wasn't able to do a
hold
stop
yourself back.
loss. Yeah,
Yeah,
to do a stop loss or hold myself back, and was kind of the opposite experience that we had this weekend. Because this weekend you were having the losing experience, and
yeah.
I was up,
It
and it
was
was
amazing
actually
to
the
lose.
yeah, it was for me. Yeah, it was for me. It was the other way around. That actually I was with a friend, and I actually gave him some money, and he was actually winning, and I wanted to stay and play, but I kept losing, and it was on tables. So, um, like, even though it's not a stop loss, if you play on machines, there is an out. You'll get an out. You'll win a jackpot, and the jackpot will be terrible, and you're like, hey, if this is how it's gonna go tonight, I can stop because it's not gonna get better. Like, especially if you're down already. But this was on tables, so the money was moving way quicker. Like, you can be like out. And even though at that time, that night, I was like, hey, I'm willing to lose this money because we're having a fun night out, it still made me realize, like, hey, it's different. If it's a month's worth salary, it's different. So when that happened, I made a commitment to myself. Um, and I discussed this with my dad as well, and was like, hey, You set a budget to how much you're willing to lose for the night. And when it's over, it's over. Like, um, and that's also a good thing here in Suriname. I mean, the ATMs have limits. So,
Yeah,
unless
you have a
you've
hard
come
limit.
really prepared, and that's also great stop loss because you can say like, hey, one thing I will never do is loan a certain amount of money from somebody else. Like if it's 100 SRD, which is like
Um,
2 3 bucks. I mean, come on, yeah, it's okay. But like excessive
yeah,
amounts of
I
money,
had a debt at
yeah,
Chanluk and I paid it back.
yeah. But still, the debt never went over $15. So
No, no, no,
let's
no. It
let's
was a
let's
fun
not.
amount. It was
Okay,
a yeah.
yeah. So
I
and
took it as a
that's
joke as well. Like, you
yeah.
know,
And
whatever
you made
happens,
it,
happens.
yeah, you made it your deal to pay me back. So the same evening. So that was a lot of fun. But then also not taking credit at the casino, not putting like any of your personal valuable items, like exchanging it or anything. And that's why I say with a gambler's mindset, it's also really important what you do when you lose. Like it's easy to say like, hey, these are the percentages I'm willing to play, but it's also the mental aspect when you lose, right? And I think that's the most important thing that I made a decision then and there. Like I don't have a lot of people in my family that are addicted to anything, but I do know that it runs in my family in certain degrees. So I told myself like, hey, I'm gonna be careful with this. This is the rules I'm gonna abide to, and I'm just gonna accept it. But also, I play for fun.
Yeah, so that's the
I
next
don't.
thing I wanted to
Yeah,
go into. Like when we were sitting at the machines, we were with another friend,
yeah.
and he was explaining like one of the slots with bombs, and it's so fun. Can you explain that recreational fun aspect of it?
So when I started, like my first experiences, especially when I was younger, I would only play card games. So if either I would play blackjack or occasionally a roulette, but either blackjack or Caribbean style poker, and then even on the machines, I would revert back to Caribbean style poker or poker in general. I would
Mm.
play basically only poker. I wouldn't play any of the real slot fruit games kind of things. But now, because of the machines and they're like renewed and they have other stuff, they have cool, insightful. Well, it's basically entertainment. Let's just face it. And also for people who are tuning in, we're like, wait a minute, why are these guys enjoying casinos? Like, where's the fun in that? Um, it's a different kind of entertainment. It's not for everybody. It's definitely not for everybody. Um, and you have to be aware of the incentives and the things the casino does to incentivize you. And maybe I have to give a full disclaimer. Um, it was only because of a personal situation that I didn't go to do my master's in Reno. Because when I was 23, I was contemplating between the master's that I've actually done now, my master's studies that I've completed, or going to Reno in Nevada to actually study something which would lead to me ending up working in a casino. That's how much I actually enjoy it. So I actually do have fun. I actually do understand the games. I do understand the odds. I also accept the odds, and that makes it a lot more fun because I don't know the insides, like because I haven't worked at a casino, but I do know well enough what the stakes are and what the odds are to accept the fact that I'm playing for fun.
Right. And it was really interesting to see, sitting there, watching old people, watching young people, eyes locked on the screen, having their rituals, petting the machine, praying. So it's a very interesting phenomenon once you sit there between the people and just observe how people interact. And I think it's a very telling as well, like, you know, what their circumstances are and how they cope with it. So I do think if you're interested, I'm not encouraging gambling, but just walk through a casino. I did this when I was in Vegas as well. I walked through several casinos and it just boggled my mind to see like retired people in the slots just tapping one button, and their eyes light up when the wheel spins. And they get that dopamine once their coins spit out. It's all just entertainment. It's something you can see on the TV or on YouTube. But that dopamine effect of hitting that button and kind of rushing through, and the animations that these machines have now, it's like really stimulating to the brain. And I think that's a dangerous part. That's what
No,
gets people hooked as
no,
well.
I really want to differentiate between how you deal with it emotionally. And I think this is really the important thing because there are people that can go to a casino every day for a year. And at the end of the year, they're truly happy and they're not in an insane amount of debt. And there are people that can go to a casino once or twice and lose their complete life savings. So really it's also about like what is your approach? If you're going into the casino to win money, you're guaranteed going to lose money. And I can attest to this because the few times in the last year that I've really lost were moments that I thought for some
Oh,
reason that I would really win.
I feel good.
And no, it's not necessarily good. It's
All
that
right.
you feel like if you lose, you should be able to win it back.
That's,
That's when
yeah,
you get
that's one of the
into a
biggest
serious
traps.
problem.
Yeah.
So if you're just going in and you're having fun, and you have to understand something as well. I don't think you have, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but have you seen a clock in the casino?
I
Remember
haven't
when you
paid much
looked at your phone?
attention,
No, there's a
but
moment
no, yeah.
when you went for your phone, you looked at the time and you were like, "Whoa, what happened?" Remember that moment?
I remember.
So casinos don't have clocks. There's a reason for that. Casinos always have ATMs. There's a
Hmm.
reason for that. And what you don't, and this is more, especially in the bigger markets and the casinos that are really good casinos that really pay attention, they comp people. So, for instance, the only comp that I take basically when I go to a casino here is that my parking is being vouched. I mean, like, I play way more than the amount of parking fee that I would have to pay. So the casino is basically saying, yeah, I mean, you can park here for free because we know you're playing and
Yeah.
often you're losing more money than if you would actually
It's
pay for the
covered. It's
parking.
covered.
So it's covered. But like in the bigger casinos or even bigger fish to fry, it probably happens here as well, but just not with me because I don't play enough money. A lot of players get comped. So say for instance you're a high roller and you spend $100,000 a night in the casino. Whether you win or lose, the fact that you're spending
Yeah, they
US
will
dollars in the
treat you
casino,
right. They will
they
give
will
you
give you a
a
free suite.
full
They will
plate
give you good
meal.
room. And if you lose a lot, they will comp everything that you need to be comped. Because basically you've lost 5 times the amount that they're comping or even 10. And they're just like, oh, you need a room to stay? Yeah, we'll give you the best suite. It's fine. It's on us.
They need to
Because
have you
you
in the best mood to keep playing.
no, but also if you're losing, you're probably the next day or when you wake up or you can't sleep, you go back down, you lose another 50,000. So that's basically the whole principle. It's on one side a money making machine. It's like entertainment, and the other side is if you enjoy it as entertainment enough that you feel like, hey, instead of sitting at home watching a television, I can actually watch something and maybe win something, but also spend money, but also food and drinks and like there's different kind of experiences. The casinos also pay for entertainment, um, as
Yeah,
well. And
like
like,
there's sometimes live entertainment, music, shows.
so there's enough to like create the whole experience. And of course, Vegas is like the Wahala, like the main that shows everything. But there, I mean, every casino that's being run is kind of, they're educated on how to get the most out of it. And I'm not only worried or mainly worried about casinos or sports betting or anything like that. I feel like more and more people are betting on their career in a similar way that they would bet on a casino. And it's all to the fact that, and that's the worried part that I'm worried about. Like I said, in a casino, if you go to win, that's when you have a real issue. That's when you're in danger. Same with in real life. If you take gambles because you're looking for shortcuts, or do you think that you can get rich quick or scheme yourself into something, those can be really big traps because if it goes wrong, it's really hard to get out of it. And whether that's getting a loan or getting uh, a loan from a shark. I mean, loan sharks
Yeah,
are
loan
the,
sharks. Yeah,
and then you take a loan from a loan shark and then you gamble it,
that's the
right?
worst.
That's the worst situation you can be in.
You just magnify the risk.
Yeah, you just, and that's something that people are
So
not aware of.
in that context, from your experience on or from what you know, how does that gambling tendency translate in those other aspects in career, etc.? Do you
So
see a high correlation or
nah, nah, nah. For me personally, no. I mean, I'm a very conservative gambler. I wasn't always, but I'm also a very conservative risk taker in business. So if you would have an entrepreneurial risk scale, I would be relatively low.
yeah,
And I'm relatively low because I'm a second to third generation entrepreneur. I think first generation entrepreneur has to take much more risk than a second or third generation.
has to?
Yeah, you have to. And when you're first generation, first of all, nobody has done it before in your family. So you have to come up with you can take advice from outsiders, from others, but still you'll be the first one who can share the experience with yourself. And you don't have the backing that others have. You can outsmart the system. You can educate yourself on how to make it better. Like I've seen videos from financial advisors. Doing air quotes here, who say to get a bank account at a really early age and get a credit card at a really early age. And even if you don't do anything with it, you'll get a higher credit score and it's easier to get a loan, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
But
that's a
again,
systematic thing.
yeah, but it's a systematic thing, and
Not
that's
here in
just
Suriname, but
no. But
you know.
also, you don't have somebody in your family like an uncle or an aunt or your dad or your mom telling like, "Hey, in this situation, do this. In this situation, do this. Try to find this gap. This happened to me. This happened to others. Watch out for this." So the first generation has to take the bigger risk. They're going to be the first one to take a loan out for a company. They're the first one to invest in things that they're not sure about it, and they have to first set up that company. The second generation, aside from knowing whether or not they A want to take over and B are qualified to take over the companies, that aside, they already have a set infrastructure. The second generation, most of the times, gets a company that's at least 15 to 20 years old. So it's been through the 7 year barrier. I consider the 7 year barrier being it takes about 7 years for a company to mature to see whether or not it isn't hype and it actually exists. So there's a full structure surrounding it. So when you take over a company that's already 15 to 20 years old, there is a structure. There's a back office. There probably is a sales team. There probably is I wouldn't say necessarily HR because that depends on the size of the company, but there's a full management structure and a board structure in place most of the times when a company is like 15 years old. So basically, second generation doesn't have to take those kind of risks
Risk. Yeah.
to take those things. They have to take other risks as expansion and not going extinct or relying too much on what the previous
It's
generation
more of
built.
a survival risk.
So it's a much more calculated risk. So I think that's the biggest difference. But I also think um, it's much more clear now that things aren't always as they seem. Not even everybody is as successful as you think. There are a lot of people that are actually much better entrepreneurs that stay silent. So that
Yeah.
kind of motivates the generation as well to say, like, hey, you know what? Instead of working for somebody who doesn't appreciate who I am, I'm going to start for myself. And then you get into the situations where, like, specialists are saying, like, hey, but I don't necessarily need to scale my own business. I can be a one-man band and just get hired by two or three companies and get paid twice the amount that I would get paid um, when I would be working for someone. And I'm not worried about that group specifically. I'm worried about the group that's looking and seeing all these entrepreneurs and thinking like, hey, there's big money. And they
Yeah.
start businesses without having any qualified experience working. So they don't fully understand the full scope of what a business is. They're only aware of one of two parts of what a business entails. The rest is complete. And like it
The
doesn't
things you don't
matter.
see.
It doesn't matter as long as it goes well, right? If everything goes well, it goes smooth, you push further, push further, push further. And then you reach to points where you either have to scale or run into competitors, and you're not set up to deal with those kind of things.
And this is the parallel to the gambling, right? Like, how do you react emotionally? Are you prepared mentally when you do lose? When you hit that limit you put for yourself, what do you do then? And it's that same mental preparation that goes into that, if you're asking me. And the thing people see are only the glamour and the numbers and the awards that people get on social media, which is usually only 5% what's actually there, maybe
Yeah, and
even
the
less.
funny thing is, you don't know if that person is a gambler either,
Yeah.
and you don't know. And the thing is, um, grinding isn't as sexy. It just isn't. Like the entrepreneurs that get the most fame are the ones that, like, they're socially out and about, and they show them. You don't know that they have a millions of debt in different situations. You just look at them and think like, ah, that's cool. They sponsor that, and they're real on the forefront. That's pretty damn cool. And you're like, yeah, I want to be like that entrepreneur. But you don't know the real story behind it, and that's something that people take in mind. So it's kind of like a casino, and you're watching somebody. And here's a good comparison. When you're watching somebody in a casino that's on a machine, and that person is constantly winning and winning, taking everything out,
Yeah, people
and that
start cheering.
person, no, but also that person moves away. The last thing you should do is go play on that machine,
Oh yeah.
right? And thinking like, hey, that machine paid out. I'm gonna do the same thing. And you're gonna lose all your money. And
Statistics.
and it's the same thing with a business. If you see somebody and they have a business model and you just and they keep on making money and they get profit, 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 and you're looking at them making so much profit, and all of a sudden they stop providing that product or service and they move on to something else, the last thing you should do is like, hey, they made so much money with that. We're going to do the same thing.
I think a good example, just to close it off, are the outsourcing companies. They're oftentimes they have contracts with a big client from overseas, for 3 2 years, and they prosper, they expand, they
Oh
keep
yeah.
hiring. And when the time comes near for the contract to end, suddenly they either sell it or close shop or wind down,
Yeah.
and then they disappear. And if they sell it and another person buys it, it's hard for them because they don't have the initial contract to sustain the company. So I think that's one of the things I've seen. If you mention that comparison,
Yeah. That's a really good comparison. And then also to take into consideration is that how should I put this? I'm trying not to put it a little too. I don't try want to put it a little too blunt, but also think of your living standards. Like if you're gambling, don't gamble with anything you need. And that's a big mistake that's being made. It's like thinking of earnings from your gambling as winnings,
income as
as
income,
income.
living income.
Yes, as living income. And I'm not just talking about um, like casino winnings. I'm also talking like the winnings that you're talking about. Say you have a business and you get a big contract, like it's a year-long contract, and it's really big. It's the biggest you've gotten before. When you're preparing for next year, don't think like, hey, this is automatically going to renew and it's going to stay a standard source of income. Or even this is going to multiply because I already got one. Now I can
Yeah,
get two
no.
or three. Like, and then living to the means, not just from a personal perspective, like saying, hey, this is what my salary is. This is the maximum amount I'm willing to spend. But same for a business. Living to the means of the business and saying like, hey, if we make this much profit or if we make this much revenue, how big of a percentage should go to salaries? How big of a percentage should go to reinvestment? How big of a percentage should go to um, supplies, so for towards
Yeah,
suppliers?
how much
So
to
those
expansion and how much do you save for a rainy day?
exactly, and most people don't calculate that. And there are people that go into the casino and they keep everything on a notepad, and they know exactly, and that's why there's a difference. Even in the field of gambling, there's a difference between professional gamblers and amateur gamblers. A professional gambler can explain to you how certain machines work. They can say how certain machines pay out. They can say so, and that's also how a casino makes their money. The casino incorporates and calculates in that there will be some players who would have a net positive. They are calculating that one in. And as long as they're not beating the system purposefully or cheating or doing things that are unethical, they will allow those people. Because at the end of the day, it's not worth their time to figure out who those people are compared to how much they're making.
Yeah, because the bottom line is from the masses.
The bottom line is from the masses. So if there's somebody who walks away with a $50 every day when he goes to casino and grinds his way to an extra 1,000, 2,000 a month, the casino is not going to be like,
It's
hey,
negligible.
if that
That's
person never does anything weird, never bets 5,000 to get 100K and walk out, there's no red flags going on. That person is like, hey, awesome, kudos to you. We don't really care about you because the guy next to you lost twice the amount that you won. So they don't care. But those people really know how the slot games work, how the table games work. They know which tables they play, which tables they don't. They know which dealers are professionals and have been on tables for 10 years. They know which dealers have just come in and haven't proven themselves yet and are more likely to mix up.
and and I think that's the other parallel to close this off. The last thing, that's the other parallel to business. When you do the business, you have to know the ins and outs. You have to ask the right question. You have to understand if you're going deep into something from start to finish and where you're gonna focus on and what you're gonna avoid.
And
That
that's
understanding is key.
and that's the thing. If you studied something for long enough, that you know the inner workings of something, and you can, with a certain amount of probability, define what the outcome is going to be, then it's much less of a gamble than you think. Whereas in a lot of cases, people gamble a lot with things they don't know. And a lot of people, both in personal life and in business life, often when they're not aware of how something works, they're more likely or they gamble more than they really realize. And I think that's a great way to summarize the gambler's mindset with another quote. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. Do you know that one?
Well, auto tune that in post. Oh, but that
Awesome.
was so fun. That was fun.
Yeah.
This was a awesome, fun episode. The gambler's mindset. If you're going to the casino, know your limits, have fun. I think that's the most important thing. We were there with a group of friends and we had fun. And let it that be it. Don't chase money. Just enjoy yourself. With that being said, Jean Luc,
This was
any
Social
final thoughts?
Confoes. Have a great night. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, see you back here, same place, same time next week. Bye bye. And swai swai.